King Joffrey Baratheon is looked at as one of the most evil villains in pop culture. But if you're able to analyze each of his evil actions, they're not only justified, but sometimes good.
We've done a few of these, and people have been requesting Joffrey for a long time because, like you said, he is one of the most hated characters probably in all of television history, and in A Song of Ice and Fire, he's usually looked at as somebody who's irredeemably evil, but I just don't think that's the case. I know you don't either, so let's get into this right away, and I think we should go in relatively chronological order, although we might save, like, the cream of the crop for the end, just because it'd be like maybe the most difficult to justify. But most of these are actually easily justifiable, and we really do think that Joffrey is looked at in an unfair light.
Let us know if we miss a single action that you don't think we can't justify within this video.
Or if you think that an action we do explain can be justified better than we did, please let us know in the comments.
So the first one, Stannis Baratheon mentions that little Joffrey, when he saw this little kitten, was told that there's little babies in its belly, and basically cut the kitten's stomach open and took these little baby kittens, these dead baby kittens, to Robert and tried to show him almost like as a, not even a trophy, just like a, hey, look what I found. The babies are in there. And people look at this as a horrific act by Joffrey. But if you just look into context here, do you really think this was that bad of a thing for Joffrey to do? It's not like we found other animals around his, quarters, or he was doing this to this animal when he was 14 years old. This was when he was a kid. And for all we know, he might have seen like a C-section or something.
This is not in any way an indication of psychotic behavior. If it was, he would know what he's doing is wrong. He would understand it's a deviancy and he'd be trying to hide it. He wouldn't bring the babies to show Robert as a trophy. You know what I mean? Like, Daddy, look what I found. Isn't this cool?
Right.
I mean, it is kind of cool. Listen, I grew up in an outdoorsy environment, okay, and I was never cutting open pregnant cats. But I mean, I definitely wasn't squeamish about animals. I saw animals eat each other and stuff like that. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. Again, if he did this at age 14 and he was, cranking off to it or something like that, then there are serious problems. And it's also not like he didn't face repercussion for this and learn from it. Robert, smacked him hard, dude. And as far as we know, he never did anything like this again.
Do we think in Of Mice and Men, Lenny is evil when he kills the rabbits in his pocket and he eventually kills that girl? I don't think we think he's evil, right? Is he a bad guy? I don't think people think he's a bad guy. I think they just think he's, not all there. I'm not saying Joffrey's not all there, but I think that's closer to the truth than he's an evil, sadistic person like Jeffrey Dahmer that's, taking these animals and playing with them sadistically.
Well, yeah, I mean, if Lenny is a full-grown adult who is mentally challenged, right? I mean, that's probably is the accountability equivalent of a small child, right? Wouldn't you say that's relatively equal? And again, if the kid didn't learn from it, it'd be one thing. If the kid was trying to hide it from the parents, that's another thing. If he knows it's bad, this is totally out of the question for me. We shouldn't even spend this much time on this. This is easily justified. It's because later on as we go, his actions kind of make you go back and look at these things and be like, well, does this really mean more than it was? No, it doesn't.
Yeah, let's just try to isolate these, because if this was Jon Snow that did it, you'd be like, oh, yeah, I don't know, this kind of weird thing that happened. But because it's Joffrey, everyone's like, oh, my, it was an early sign. It was an evil guy.
So from here, if we fast forward a little bit then and try to look at another event and see if it lines up with the past to formulate this psychotic behavior, we have the legendary scene of Micah the Butcher's Boy during his confrontation. Joffrey was trying to impress Sansa, right? They're two preteens in love. And he sees Arya and the Butcher's Boy playing next to the river. He tries to assert himself a little bit too much. Arya gets aggressive. The dog gets aggressive, right? He gets bit by a relatively wild animal. And he loses his temper a little bit. A chain reaction ensues. And the Hound ends up hunting down the Butcher's Boy. Now, I think the implication from people referring to this as an evil act of Joffrey is that Joffrey, commanded that the Butcher's Boy be hunted down and killed by the Hound. I don't know why anybody would put the blame on a very young child that another child was killed by his parents' hired hand, that being the Hound. This is much more so on Cersei. There's no way. We did not see any sort of ordering of death go on. And if so, Cersei would still be the gatekeeper to that action. It has to be her to command it. It's the same with the dog, especially with the dog. This is collective punishment for these dogs, and it makes no sense that Cersei made this judgment. It's just pure cruelty. There should have been a two-dog solution, but Cersei had not played with Jaime's boppet for a few days or something, and she was pissed. That is in no way on Joffrey.
Yeah, what control does he really have? He can just bitch and moan. Oh, it's not going my way. I want it to. This is actually how it went down. Even if they believed or didn't believe him, it's all up to the parents to pull the trigger on whatever happens moving forward. So whatever blame you want to say on Micah, which, we might do a whole video on Micah and how the Hound was basically like the Mary Mazdur saving Westeros from the power that was. I mean, I don't want to give it away, but there's a reason why Varys didn't say a prayer for the butcher's boy, so
correct. Yeah, and also, and I want to really emphasize, we don't see on screen or on page Joffrey ordering the death of any of these people. Okay, he's clearly upset, he's clearly hurt. These were actions taken by the authority figures. These were not actions taken by him. And even if he did send the Hound after him, I don't think he said go down and slaughter him like the animal he is. It's like, no, dude.
Yeah,
I
know, right?
This guy gets some high T energy. This guy has Sigma energy. I looked like a manlet compared to him out there on the field. Maybe he's trying to get Micah in a room privately, to get a few pointers from him or something like that. And the Hound went a little crazy. Right. You really don't know.
But also, the idea that you're bringing these direwolves down to King's Landing, that's idiotic. Ned should be executed for thinking that these little girls can control dire wolves. They're huge, not just wolves. They're huge wolves that are feral. They're not even domesticated in any way. So, yeah, I'm glad, actually, if I'm one of the travelers going down to King's Landing, that the dire wolves are off the track with us. Like, good. I don't know. These guys were looking at my ass, slobbering,
licking
thinking,
their lips,
I want to bite out of that. I'm like, damn it, dude. I knew I should have done those squats. I'm just looking so delicious on this trail.
It's like Robert looking at Ned.
Oh, dude, it is just like Robert looking at Ned. Now, one of the most shocking moments in all of Game of Thrones, execution of Ned Stark, was given very blatantly. So this is something you can really directly point at as Joffrey as doing. And now the question is, was it good or bad? He executes Ned Stark, the man who, for all he knows, orchestrated the kidnapping of his uncle Tyrion, fought his other uncle in the streets, and then attempts a coup by coming into the throne room with a piece of paper. For all he knew, he could have written with Littlefinger or Varys in the other room. So, excuse me if Joffrey doesn't have any really sympathies for this guy. That actually probably was a pain in the ass the entire way down as he's trying to put the Riz on Sansa. Executing a traitor, I see where Joffrey's going here. And yeah, execute Ned. What, you going to send him up north? You mean back home? To the wall with his son?
That's paradise.
That's a vacation.
That's paradise. Exactly. Dude, this guy was trying to usurp his rule and claim he was illegitimate. Like, are you kidding me? Like, try telling a loving son that they aren't their father's true offspring. Did you see Joffrey's face when Robert was on his deathbed? Joffrey was in shambles. Like, no, my daddy, my father, he can't leave. Please don't say it's true. He was upset, and whether or not he puts on a tough face later on, in the moment, he was absolutely upset. He does not want to hear that he's not Robert, High T. Robert's firstborn son. No one would want to hear that. So if Ned comes in spewing his propaganda, even if it's accurate, of course you're going to react strongly. Not to mention, he has the entire Lannister counterforce whispering in his ear, telling him that he is wrong, right? And in regards to the actual killing himself, he could have made Ned suffer, but he didn't. He told Sansa he was going to be merciful, and he did. Dude, Ned's leg was probably infected and septic as hell by this point. He was probably going to die anyway. He was nasty and sweaty looking, in the show at least, which tells me he is like knocking on death's door, right? That's a high-ass fever. This is a total mercy killing, plus Ned is always miserable with Cat anyway, so, I think Joffrey did the Lord's work here.
Yeah, it was weird. Ned looked like he was constantly in a Michael Bay Transformers movie, just how much sweaty and like bronze he looked the entire time.
It's like in Mexico, right? It has a Mexico filter on him.
Now, this is not anything evil he did. I think it's viewed by many as something he did that was like poor judgment, but dismissing Barristan, okay? We are currently rewatching Game of Thrones here on this channel, so if you want to check it out, go down to the playlist where it says Game of Thrones live streams. We just watched where Barristan is in the throne room and Ned comes in, gives the piece of paper to Cersei. Cersei rips it up. Barristan standing there goes, I thought those are the Kingswoods. Dude, he's so lost in the sauce about what's going on, because as soon as like action ensues when Jon Slint like backstabs Ned Stark there, Barristan doesn't do anything. But I know Barristan has the capabilities to cut through people like butter. I have full confidence he has the abilities to do that. But he doesn't know what's going on in the present moment. His situational awareness is bad, but his tactile skills are great. Not good for the Kingsguard anymore. I'm sorry, dude. go live out your best, or not your best,
Yeah,
your best years, your last few years somewhere else. And thank you for your service.
Oh, yeah, dude, he's past his prime. There's nothing more you can do. You know, send him off with high honors, but he's just not fit anymore. Jaime is still absolutely in his prime in this moment, with two hands at least. He is in his prime. It's his uncle as well. It's somebody he's very, very comfortable with. And if Joffrey was being attentive during the whole situation when Ned brought the note and Cersei ripped it up, even if the whole thing was shady, you have to shore up your alliances, people you know are going to be in your corner no matter what. And Barristan's reactions there, they do not give you confidence in the way he's going to swing in the wind later on, right? Like, you don't know. You know that he has this loyalty to Robert. Those are the king's words, sir. It's like, yeah, you know what that means. You know what that means. It means he's not on board with this at all. He's not on board with you being king. He's not on board with the Lannisters taking control. So you have to get rid of him. Barristan is lucky that he was not executed, especially with the way he kind of stormed off, you know?
Dude, I got in an Uber once with a guy that had to have been 80 years old, right? And I feared for my life the entire time.
You feared for your life.
I feared for my life. What would you say?
Because the driver was 80?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you meant like there's like a co-passenger.
The driver was 80,
like, why is he so dangerous?
No. I was the passenger. And as we were driving, I feared for my life the entire time. Imagine that, but people coming at you with swords. That's basically the feeling I get from Joffrey in this moment. I'm thinking, get Barristan out of there. Get him out. I can't deal with this. That's too much anxiety. I'm trying to run a kingdom here, and I don't even know if the guy in front of me remembers how to spell his name or even if he has a middle name. You know, this guy he's past his prime. And what do you want to do? Just send him to some conflict so he just dies a unceremonious death somewhere? I guess you could have just sent him to the War of the Five Kings out there to, go out. But, he probably could have turned. You had a feeling this guy was not on your side anyway. So.
Yeah, there's no false pretenses in what Joffrey did. He was honest. It's time to go.
So another thing we see within season 2 of Game of Thrones, and I think this is in Clash, it might be in the first Game of Thrones book, but the order to kill all of Robert's alleged bastards within King's Landing or anywhere they can find them, and to put that on Joffrey, we've never heard him say anything like that. When have you ever heard him say that? When did he ever give the order? Right? And if he did, I guarantee you it was a miscommunication, because it was the City Watch. I'm sure Jon O'Slint was trying to figure out another way he can climb up that slimy ladder after he just got Harrenhal. He probably just overhears Joffrey in the other room thinking I wish these bastards are gone. And then he just goes, I know what that means.
Right.
Kill all the bastards.
Listen,
that's what, this is ridiculous. You can't put this on Joff.
No, and I swear to God, I won't use this excuse again from this point forward. This is the last one I think we need to use this excuse for. But if anything, this was Cersei. Okay, this was Cersei. He is a child and should not be expected to be able to see through all of his mother's schemes. Also, even if he did, and he ordered all these babies dead, ancient Egypt style, they are actual potential threats to him if the consensus in King's Landing and the realm ends up being whatever Ned's version of the propaganda is, Like if people buy into it, and we know Ned sent that letter all around, if that ends up being what the majority of the people get behind, you have a lot of potential people for another usurping. Look what just happened. The Targaryens just got overthrown. Robert sat down on that throne. Who's to say that a bastard couldn't be legitimized essentially by the collective will of the realm to usurp a new abomination? It's very pragmatic, actually, even if it is Joffrey. But despite that, I don't even think it is Joffrey. I think this was Cersei, and maybe it was Janos, man. Maybe it was Special J, just like you said.
Yeah, or, he just said, hey, bring all the bastards. I want them coming to the Red Keep. We're all going to hang out and have fun. And
these are my brothers, right?
Yeah, these are my brothers. And Cersei's like, no, kill them. So she definitely just kind of put in a little disclaimer on that order and really just changes directions of it. The other thing Joffrey does is, this isn't the worst thing, but some people are like, oh, poor Sir Dantos. But when Sir Dantos shows up late to his name day celebration, this is the king. This isn't like some knight or high lord. The king of Westeros is name day. And this guy is showing up not only late, but just drunk off his ass. Just like, oh, sorry, my lord. I don't know what was doing. So lost. And eventually, he's like, hey, listen, do you want some more wine? Here you go. And he's just so much. He's about to choke.
Thank you, my lord. This is delicious. Can I stop drinking now, please?
This reminds me of that incident where Adrian Peterson, he used a switch on his kid. You can't do that for your kid. But listen, end of the day, That kid probably didn't do whatever he was doing again. And I guarantee you Sir Dantos never showed up
No,
late.
you know what? I bet he got his ass on a treadmill
Lessons
and lost
learned.
some weight, too. He's a disgrace to his fellow knights. He's a complete disgrace. You can't show up like this in the King's Landing. You're a member of a sacred order here. It's absolutely insane. He thinks he can do whatever he wants. And I hope that Joffrey found this guy superior officer and gave him a lashing like Dantos could only dream of, honestly. It is nothing but mercy that Dantos was spared, and I hope the only reason he was spared was to give the guy who condoned this type of behavior the punishment that Dantos should have gotten, like a castration or some kind of crazy flogging. Another instance that comes pretty shortly after that is during the Battle of Blackwater, one of the biggest battles in all of Westeros history. It's something that a teenager, a young teen, probably shouldn't be thrown into and expected to be like the best leader of all time, right? Wouldn't you think so? He acts pretty cowardly in this situation, but instead of saying like, wow, he's a real piece of shit, he should be like Aegon the Conqueror on a dragon, except he has no dragon. Isn't it a little more reasonable to think like, yeah, this guy is really unexperienced, actually no battle experience whatsoever. Throwing him to the biggest one of all time maybe is a little bit unrealistic, and maybe Joffrey, by the way, realizes his own weaknesses and decides like, I'm kind of a liability on the battlefield.
Right, yeah. And also, if I die here, what a morale killer, right? If I'm not...
Yeah.
Like, if you had to pick a couple options here, it's like, hey, you can't have a great leader, but your options are your king is dead in front of you, or your king is not retreating, but regressing to the rear to ensure that he has full eyes on the entire battlefield. I think that's what he was doing, right? He was just regressing, making sure the entire battle's in front of him. He doesn't want to put himself in harm's way, because if he dies, morale killer.
Yeah, I mean, even if he's not like taking up the rear or whatever, it is true that it's a morale killer, and he's definitely, regardless of what his like intentions were, in these moments, he is realizing his weakness compared to these other men that are fighting. They're battle hardened, they're at least combat trained, they're like 6 foot plus, dripping with tea, and plus, dude, he just got told by one of his own house, the Lannisters' supposedly most loyal men, the Hound, Sandy Raisin Nuts, right, that he's not going to obey him anymore. He just says fuck the king and then leaves. It's like, dude, that is talking about morale like depreciation for the army. That's morale depreciation for the king as well. Like, what are you supposed to do after that? Again, this is a child, okay? This is a child. Yeah. Imagine some guy that you've looked up to both protect you and be like some sort of like a combat role model, right? And he's scary for your entire life, and you're told this guy's going to obey you. He's your basically sworn sword. And then he just kind of tells you to fuck off. Like, what are you supposed to do now? Who can you trust?
Yeah, I wouldn't even trust a 14-year-old to be a manager at some grocery store, and then all of a sudden one of your leads says, I quit, and for them to actually recover properly and do a good job, let alone a king, right? So, yeah, whatever. He's a kid. It's justified, I think, the way he's kind of acting in the situation. He doesn't have that much experience. Imagine your first battle is the Battle of Blackwater. I mean, that is a cherry popper, or like a cherry bomb, if you think about it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
A little later on, we have the Prosty Roz interacting with King Joffrey. Now, everything in Season 2, if you don't like it, it really just comes down to kink shaming. It's mostly in Season 3, after we discover that she is spying for his ballless rival, Varys. Littlefinger wants to tie off this loose end by eliminating her. And the most important part here is that we don't see the interaction between Littlefinger and Joffrey. So for all we know, before Roz is... escorted out of this life. For all we know, Joffrey could have been asking Littlefinger, we need to beat the Starks, but to beat the Starks, we have to be in the Stark mindset. So maybe I need to pass the sentence and swing the sword. Let me swing the sword of justice. Give me somebody that needs to be punished. Or maybe Joffrey was like, give me someone who can dodge crossbow bolts, because I got this cool trick to perform at court. And if I get this thing down right, everyone's going to be loving it. I think a lot of the kings are just going to drop their swords and just admit I'm the king just based off this performance alone. But Gator, what do you think had happened, and how can you explain this interaction?
Yeah, I mean, there's several different ways to justify it, but in my opinion, Joffrey was, in fact, raised very pious, okay? Regardless of how seriously he takes the faith, like on a supernatural level, it's indisputable that if you look at somewhere like Old Town, the presence of the faith fosters a healthier community, a healthier society, and King's Landing has fallen to the wayside, right? Like, it's distanced itself a lot from the faith, and it's not turning out well. It stinks. There are brothels up the ass. You have the master of baby oil, Littlefinger, running the show, and there's prostitution everywhere. I mean, we literally see that other girl, the brown of skin one, give that aristocrat, that little cum kiss.
Yeah.
Total degenerate behavior, right? The King's Landing is not supposed to be a travel destination for whores and freak-offs. I think that Joffrey is trying to clean this place up like a real king would. He didn't even fall for the temptation. He has these 2 prostitutes in his room, and he has the opportunity, like, I could get a little action here before I do what I'm going to do. He doesn't do it. He just kills them.
So these are kind of larger events that happen within Joffrey's life here. So going first with Tyrion. We don't know when that started. This is like a tit for tat thing. And as soon as we just go, Joffrey, whatever you're doing is escalating it a lot, I don't think we're looking at the body of records here between the two and saying like, oh, Joffrey definitely is going over the line. When you look at Tyrion, who has, for the most part, the age and strength advantage probably most of his life. I don't think he just woke up one day like in Winterfell and was like, I'm going to be mean to Joffrey. I guarantee you it started earlier. There's a lot of things that happen between him that we see on screen. Joffrey cutting that book, the story of the Four Kings, or even making that huge production during his own wedding. Joffrey does it for Tyrion, right? He has this whole, which, I mean, is that kind of self-absorbed to think Tyrion, it's all about Tyrion when he puts a bunch of like dwarfs out there to do a display of the War of the Five Kings. I think it's awesome. I think it's really cool production value. He's giving these people jobs. I don't know why everyone's looking at Joffrey like he's such a bad guy. Then he's trying to get his uncle into the festivity and, you know, trying to get him in the mood by like, hey, be my cupbearer. Like, this pie's dry.
Right, dude. First of all, think of the effort that it took to get 5 midgets into this production. Okay, I think it was 5, right, or something like that. That's massive. This is not 2025 with the internet and ZipRecruiter, right, where you can just be like, hey, we need this person with this description for this role. No. This is going to be word of mouth only, like horse and buggy style, trying to find these guys for this little production. It'd be very difficult to do, okay, compared to what it would be like today. You got to appreciate the grind that Joffrey's on to make this thing happen. Also, guys give each other shit. Spoiler alert, guys are savage to each other. And guess what? We all forgive each other for it the next day. It's just the way it is. We don't know whose turn it was to be on the receiving end. We don't know what happens behind the scenes. It's not like we're seeing every second of these people's lives. Okay, we're not. And if it really did go too far, right, if like their back and forth went too far, let me ask you this question. Whose job should it be to shut the whole thing down and say, okay, we better stop this? Is it going to be the child, the literal child, or maybe the adult in the room? Yeah, maybe the adult is child height, but I don't think that that's how we base things in society. I think that Tyrion has more responsibility to take the higher ground than Joffrey does, not just be a little pouty bitch.
Not even that, like you said, the one situation with the two people, with Joffrey and Tyrion, but if Tywin looked down upon all of these actions, you think Tywin would step in, but he seems to be like, okay, yes, whatever. You know, for the most part. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we know Tywin says several times, like Tyrion's like, he's a Lannister too, he's my son, right? He's not going to let his son sincerely be humiliated. He was well aware it's a bit. His family will not be humiliated, even if it's Lannister on Lannister, okay? It just isn't going to happen.
Let's get to the final, arguably the hardest to defend actions Joffrey has done to people within Westeros, and this is the tormenting of Sansa Stark. And just before we get into it, let's just remember, everybody, putting this into context, that this is the girl, the daughter of the enemy. The enemy. Imagine if Hitler had a daughter in America during World War II. Just think of that for a little bit. Just for a second.
Man, what I would give to be a straight man alive during World War II in that situation. But, no, okay, dude, I agree. And just even to begin there, we have a pre and post Starks being the enemy Joffrey to look at. And Joffrey was not cruel to Sansa at all until the turn was taken by Ned in the throne room on that day. Okay, he was pretty gung-ho on Sansa. He was pretty sweet on her. Yeah, he had a little bit of problems with Arya or whatever, but that's because Arya was pestering him, and it was definitely a battle of personalities there. But he does go a little bit crazy on Sansa after a while, because think about the situation he's in. We hinted at it a little bit earlier, but both of his uncles, who he looks up to, these are his role models potentially, especially Jaime, end up being unjustly kidnapped and persecuted by Sansa's family. And eventually they go to war, okay? That's a pretty big deal. And not to mention, she is the daughter of the direct person who was the last guy, first of all, to see your father alone. And as soon as he comes out of that room, starts telling you and telling the realm that you are not the son of your father, okay? That's BS. That's going to make you start to wonder, like, okay, did this guy Ned Stark, like, did he just kill my dad and then try to like in a vulnerable state and then try some shit. Anyway, there's plenty of justification for why he behaves in a general bad mood, and that covers certain things like forcing Sansa to look at Ned's head on a spike, right? Stuff like that. This guy's literally a traitor, and Sansa has been a notable two-face and a bitch, right? Like being super rude to some people, being super nice to other people.
Oh, yeah.
If I was Joffrey and I looked at that, I'd say like, yeah, she's being nice to me now, but first of all, what is she saying behind my back? And two, am I going to wake up one morning and she's going to start being a super bitch to me? I mean, I have met her mother, right?
Right. I mean, and also, let's remember, she's kind of a prisoner of war at this point. And she's like living in a lap of luxury when it comes to prisoner of war. You know, if I had my choice, whether I'd be in the dungeons where Ned Stark was or living in the Red Keep, even though I'm being surrounded and, oh, Joffrey's so mean to me. I'll take that. I'll take the ass whoopings. I'll take the beatings, people stripping my clothes off. Again, contrary to popular belief, I'm not a 12-year-old girl. So,
right.
You know, maybe my opinions would change if I ever was in that situation. But luckily for me, I'll never be in that situation. I'm sitting here in Joffrey's shoes, too. And as he's, like, talking to her, she doesn't give him anything. And it's kind of like, dude, what the hell's wrong with you? Did I, like, knock something loose? Do I have to knock it back into place? Because during his name day, you know, one of the knights, they're battling. And he's like, oh, well struck, dog. And then he turns to Sansa, like, did you like that? And she's like, it was well struck. Joffrey's like, yeah, I just said that. I just said it was well struck. Like, are you even here right now? Like, what's going on? I just think there's a lot of things going on in Joffrey's head right now. First off, he's fighting a war. He has a prisoner of war here who, just think of the internal conflict of this poor boy. He was going to marry her. And now she's literally the daughter or the sister of the enemy. Like, he's got to be dealing with a lot, too. I don't think a lot of people are taking consideration of the internal conflict Joffrey's going through right now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Not to mention, I mean, look what he's dealing with. Look at his parents, right? Like his biological parents. Joffrey's supposed to basically be a spitting image of like Cersei and Jaime, and we know they're into each other. Are you telling me that he is not at the very least being sexually harassed by Cersei all the time? Maybe it's just like little hints, or like maybe just like, hey, Joffrey, are you sure you want to do that? Maybe puts her hand on his thigh just a little bit too long. Joffrey's not incestuous, okay? He's not, and actually he doesn't really seem to be into any sort of premarital sexual relations of any kind. So I'm sure he's not appreciating the advances that Cersei's making on him. But what's he supposed to do? He's trying to be a good son. I'm just agreeing with you, right? There's a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes that we're not privy to. No one would behave this way out of nowhere, and it isn't out of nowhere. He has plenty of justification. I think we should probably bring up the most egregious thing, just address it directly, and that is when Joffrey actually orders people to beat Sansa, right? Like strike her, I should say. Mm-hmm. Now, I think it's definitely worthy of note to look at this from a different lens. What would his father call this? He would call this honoring his wife. He would call each and every strike honoring his wife. He hears this growing up. He's ensconced with it. He is honoring his wife when she's being disobedient, okay? I'm not saying it's right. I wouldn't do that personally. That's not my thing. But I don't think that Joffrey's getting his rocks off on it, right? He's satisfied, yes, but it's because he thinks he's making progress in both his relationship with Sansa and possibly in convincing her, help quell squash the beef with Robb, right? Because she's clearly, like she puts on this little face like, oh, you're so right, my king. But it's so dull. There's no personality behind it. She is being such a buzzkill all the time.
Yeah, and if there is some sort of weakness, some sort of secret he can extract from Sansa by beating her in the throne room, I think he's going to have to do that. Would you beat a woman in front of, I don't think there are hundreds of people there, but maybe 100 so people to get secrets to eventually win the war?
Yes, of course. Obviously, yes.
Yeah,
what kind of a question is that? Of course,
comment down below.
Yes.
Comment down below. Also, the same people, you know, when I say comment down below, but they're the same people that be like, I would never sacrifice my daughter to save the Westeros from the incoming forces. Like, dude,
tell that to like the hundreds of thousands of like mothers and fathers whose sons now have to go and die in whatever battle because you would sacrifice one life. Like, listen, I know it's like an irrational love you have for your child that don't want to sacrifice it, but that's not the situation we're talking about. We're talking about a hypothetical, like, would you beat a woman to blah blah blah? And I guarantee there's a huge amount of women and simps in this fandom that would say we're unreasonable for saying this, but we are not. Okay, I guarantee you we are not. And the other thing I want to say about this whole courtroom beating thing is too, if somebody's putting on a show and you're the the subject of it and you're becoming a victim, you can kind of turn that around. You know what I mean? Like, you can kind of get the crowd in your favor, right? You kind of got to make a little routine
by liking
of it.
it.
Yeah, you play into it. Like, you start going above and beyond what his orders are of you, you know? You kind of get a little attitude. And even if it is a malicious situation with Joffrey and he's getting, like, pissed at you for getting into it and kind of winning over the crowd, it doesn't matter. You already won over the crowd. What's he going to do?
Yeah.
Punish you? Now he looks like a piece of shit.
Hey, thanks for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see more content like this and smash that like button.
Or not. We don't care.